This podcast is produced by the Portland Press Herald and sponsored by the Berlin City Auto Group. Experience easy, only at Berlin City.
Hi, this is Greg Kesich. I'm the editorial page editor at the Portland Press Herald. Here with Sarah Collins, the assistant editorial page editor. And I've been on vacation for a week. I have been reading the paper, but I have not been reading the online comments. And Sarah, what have you seen caught your eye?
Well, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about Donald Trump's proposal to allow the rich to deduct their childcare expenses. We came out against it. Reader Nod Nostrabor disagrees with us. The problem with all of these for the poor programs is such programs incentivize being poor. There's a very obvious moral problem that arises when being poor is incentivized. If the government's going to subsidize anything, it should subsidize it for all. Otherwise, it's just more regressive socialism.
So the incentive for being poor is helping you pay for your child care so you can go to work?
Right. Imagine that.
Yeah, so maybe like if you got child care and go to work to be a child care provider, maybe.
Right. It's like the incentives Portland gives people to go to the homeless shelter, those nifty mats and lining up for your meals and.
Yeah. So I think I did read the edit, and I think it was the point was that it only helps people who deduct, who itemize their taxes.
Right.
And that is the top 50% of wage earners. So
right.
People who are really struggling would never get any benefit from it.
Right. And another commenter said, actually, the poor do work. They're your friendly cashiers at Walmart, the clerks at the mom and pop store, workers with the disabled, school aides, and others who work hard but don't make a living wage. I'm all for the tax breaks, he says, or she, but the bottom rung of the income ladder should be addressed too. In the long run, it will keep people off welfare.
Right. I mean, it's a really good point. I think when we talk about the working class, a lot of people imagine it's a white guy who works in a factory, and it's really not. It's much more diverse. A lot of women, very low wage jobs are dominated by women, service jobs, things like that.
Mm-hmm. And they're also, they don't get vacation, they don't get sick pay.
Right. Yep. Family leave.
Right.
So those are all ways that could help people, maintain jobs and along with a bigger minimum wage, maybe keep them off public assistance.
I agree.
We agree again.
Indeed.
Sorry, Nod Nostrum.
Apparently, Nostrabor is a
Nostrabor.
Rare Pokemon that's a giant metallic gorilla. So I educated myself today.
See, you learn something every day.
We've got a comment that's twice as long as what it commented on. A letter to the editor calling for paying a living wage. Excalibur 1066 said, heads up, Dawn, you start the trend. Start a business in Portland, pay $18 an hour, provide on-site daycare, full health insurance, and 4 weeks consolidated leave. Also, only hire employees who have no skills, no education, and no training. Get back to us on how well you're doing.
Mm-hmm. But so what the letter was saying that we should have a higher minimum wage?
Right. If you want the economy to thrive, you have to put money in the hands of the consumer.
Right.
Which seems pretty obvious to me, but...
Well, it's complicated, right? I mean, we know that it does some things, some negative things and some positive things. Mm-hmm. But I think the positives outweigh the negatives, especially when we've gone so long with flat wages.
Right.
It's certainly going to change the way some businesses operate, but it may create opportunities for more businesses.
Every crisis offers an opportunity. I'm trying to think of that Chinese saying that everybody puts on their Facebook pages. But
right. But I think often in policy discussions, everybody talks about things that's either having no cost at all or just cost and no benefit.
Right, very black and white.
And really, the fact is everything has both good and bad.
Got a letter to the editor that wasn't terribly happy with Roger Cates for coming out against Clinton.
No, Trump.
Right, coming out against Trump.
Well, he didn't come out for
Oops.
Clinton.
I've seen those two names so often in the past 6 months that it's all a blur, people. But a commenter with the Latin name Sina Mains Rea said that's an awful lot of words to say. I know you are, but what am I? The letter writer went on at length about what a hypocrite Roger Cates is and cited a lot of examples of Hillary Clinton's mendacity, which I probably don't need to recount for anybody. Mm-hmm. If you've read a letter to the editor or you happen to tune into Fox News, you know what they are.
Right. But this is the circular argument. Every time anybody says anything bad about Trump, the response is, well, what about Hillary?
Right.
And then, so what? What about Hillary? I mean, he didn't hardly even talk about Hillary. He didn't say he was going to support her.
No.
He just said why he wasn't going to vote against Trump, which is kind of newsworthy coming from a Republican.
Yes. It was the most newsworthy statewide Republican announcement prior to Susan Collins.
Yes. And if he had come out and said, I don't like Hillary Clinton, that's not really news either,
right,
because he's a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll be interesting to see, what was that writer? The Latin name?
Oh, sine mens rea, meaning without...
Criminal mind?
Right.
Yeah. Well, we'll see who controls the Republican zeitgeist after this election, whether it's people like that or like Collins and Cates. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm putting my money on the Latin name.
Yes.
Right.
I was so happy to see that because, I took 4 years of Latin in high school and 3 in college, so anytime I get a chance to use those skills, I feel like my education has been worth it after all.
You see? What else we got?
The famous analysis by the New York Times, or at least famous in Maine, for revealing that the city of Presque Isle is the epicenter of anxiety in the United States. Yeah. Several people took issue with both our coverage of that analysis and our editorial. A psychologist named Gordon Street, who's written some Maine Voices columns for us, said the study didn't find Maine with higher rates of anxiety-related searches. It's particularly frustrating, he said, because I happen to agree with the editorial writer that many of the tens of thousands of Mainers who suffer from anxiety and other mental health issues aren't getting the help they need. But building an argument on a foundation of unscientific research and flawed assumptions will damage credibility and make it even harder to garner support for such causes.
Yeah. So this guy has done these studies before where he looks at just at search terms.
Right.
And puts them, maps them out geographically.
Right.
And he did one on racism that I remember where he found that it was coming from a lot of places you wouldn't expect. People were searching for, I forget how he defined characteristically racist terms. Mm-hmm. So this is a case where he looked at what, like people looking up anxiety or panic attacks?
Panic attacks, how do I relax?
Yeah.
How do I calm down? And if you're in Presque Isle and you need treatment for anxiety, you have to drive 2.5 hours to Bangor, basically.
Yeah, so maybe WebMD is your therapist.
And by the way, every New England state was pretty high on the anxiety ratio, at least 10 points higher than the national average. Maine was 21 points higher. Right,
and the funny thing about these surveys is they don't really tell you why. He has no...
And they don't mention what the national average is, which I kept looking for in all the stories about it. Another piece that got a lot of attention was a Maine Voices suggesting that local businesses would benefit if their customers paid with cash rather than credit or debit cards. And
very controversial idea.
Apparently. But a pretty well thought out comment from a guy named John Eddy, who says he's worked in the industry for over a decade, notes that not only that credit card processing provides a lot of good jobs in Maine, but he notes that businesses would greatly benefit by accepting credit or debit cards only and not accepting checks or cash. Checks are a pain that no one wants to deal with anymore. Right. And cash, while most people don't see it, costs more than the 3% credit card fee. Just sending a paid employee to the bank for half an hour to make a deposit or get change costs money. It is expensive to take credit cards, but it's also expensive not to take them.
That's really interesting.
I wouldn't have thought of that.
I recently I went camping and we drove hours into what I consider the wilderness, and we needed cash, and,
right.
And neither of us had a.
Who carries cash?
We didn't have a dime. We had to we had to go drive out back to Brownsville Junction and find an ATM. But it was.
Or one of those ATMs at the convenience store that charges you $3.
Yeah, we paid the $3. Yes, exactly what we did. So I just have gotten so used to never ever having to pull out my wallet and have any money in it.
Yeah, I spent $2 on an ice cream cone Saturday, and I paid for it with a debit card, which is sort of shameful. I mean, who am I, Queen Elizabeth, that I don't carry cash? But
right, just so darn convenient. Anything else?
Nah, I think that pretty much wraps it up for this week.
Well, I'm glad to catch up, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Portland Press Herald podcast. The Press Herald podcast is now available in iTunes. Visit our website at pressherald.com, and you can also email us at podcast@pressherald.com.